Mentioned that, as per a report by NSDC, which is National Skill Development Corporation, there are about 15 million graduates which enter into job market every year, but not all of them have right skill set. I'll turn to Mr. Mokashi. Mr. Mokashi, you have spent almost 20 years in care rating and you have a long, illustrious career. What kind of skill set you think these graduates require, and how CCRA can help them enter into the job market?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Typically, a graduate level program is a very basic program, and the typical skills of financial analysis are taught to a certain extent, but typically an MBA program or a CA program adds a specific value to that particular skill set. And we have seen that while we, as Revati mentioned earlier, that we hire CAs, CFAs and MBAs also, we find that it is a very basic general level skill set that they come with. And they are not in a position to more often deliver what is required from day one. They require considerable amount of additional training to be given by us. And I have spent 20 years in this industry, and I have always wondered, why is credit risk taken as a sort of a given? Like, okay, somebody can easily pick up the skills and there is no skill set or a body of knowledge required in this particular area. And if you look at the large number of assets under management all over the world, something like 200, if you take the entire capital which is being managed, only 1/4 is equities and 3/4 is debt. You will be surprised with that. And when we go for an interview to an MBA school, people, young enthusiastic students are bouncing with their knowledge on betas and IRRs and whatnot. But when I ask them what is a DSCR, they are sort of completely perplexed with the idea that a credit analysis is something which is required to be done. If 3/4 of the world is run by credit analysts, only 1/4 is run by equity analysts, if that be the case. And I was just speaking to him before this program. I mean, the credit risk profession is far more wider than what we think. It is not just the financial institutions or the bond markets. Imagine if you were somebody who's in marketing, let's say in a large automobile company, appointing dealers or distribution agents or suppliers and things like that. Everywhere you need to do a credit analysis check on every of these party which is there. So it magnifies the whole profession to much wider levels. I have spent time as a purchasing manager with a multinational company called Otis, and I was completely at sea as far as analyzing credit risk is concerned at that point of time. Because our entire training is more of technical as an engineering graduate, and MBA talks about so many big things. But I believe such a program, to my mind, is going to fill in that kind of gap, create a sense of specialized skill or training which is there well in advance, so that industries and other companies can really benefit from day one when they hire these people with this special qualification and knowledge, a body of knowledge.
Just to fill in the numbers, Mr. Mokashi mentioned about 1/4 of capital is equity. In fact, if you total up the entire market cap of all the indexes around the world, it's around $51 trillion. And the total debt market, including CDS, as per Bank of International Settlements, is around $150 trillion. So that's approximately 1/4 and 3/4 of the total capital out there in the world. Still, people are dying to become more equity analysts and not debt analysts, but the case should be vice versa. Going back with the same question to Mr. Banga, you had a very long, 33 years of career in State Bank of India, which is the largest bank. How do you think credit skills can fit in a role like bank? I mean, with the kind of new banking licenses, and SBI has almost 10,000 branches.
Let me also, take the point which Mr. Mokashi was also making. Credit skills are not part of only, trying to assess whether you have to give a loan or not. It gets into a multiple usage kind of thing when you are in your workplace. Number two is, can you just repeat the question? I just missed your point also.
So in terms of, you had a very long career with the bank. In terms of credit risk and the kind of skill set which are required for a banking job, I mean, not necessarily like cashier one, but for the credit risk professional perspective, how do you think the certification can add value, or people can develop those skills?
Secondly, yeah, fine, sorry. And where we were thinking about where it adds value. If you see our own country right now, where are we, We have got a huge wave ahead of us to develop. What is the credit absorption which we have seen so far in this country? We are at negligible levels. There is a multiple amount of development which has yet to take place, and that development will not take place till the time the projects which are supposed to come up for this development get funded. Now, for all the fundings, whatever you do, from wherever you get, people don't have money. Money ultimately gets pulled down from various sources, from banks, maybe from international markets, from other sources. All these people need a kind of a skill development which needs to reassure them about the safety and the returns which they are going to get from that money. It is a plethora of market. There's limitless opportunities in this market. And a little, where we find ourselves held up is the education system, though of course it has developed in terms of numbers, number of colleges, number of programs which are getting offered. The level of knowledge and the skills both somehow is lacking. When people are coming to us, we are also finding that they are not very aware of what they are supposed to do and what they will be assessed at. People may be good, at ratio analysis, but then they may have no knowledge of the industry in which they are going to work. They have no knowledge of the interlinkages of the various sectors which are there in the market. And that is where, when a credit person is to develop, he has to learn, he must learn all these aspects. But as far as the boundaries are concerned, there is absolutely, it's limitless. The opportunities are also great. And mind you, it is not only knowledge which comes from the textbook, it is knowledge which mainly comes from the market, and which is very necessary for you to develop, and you have to play with number of aspects.
Well, one thing I would add here is, the entire CCRA curriculum has been based on industry practice analysis. So we meet industry folks, including, rating agencies, research firms, and then hear from them in terms of what kind of skill set they are looking for when they hire people. And then we basically put in those skill set in the textbook or the course, whatever we are designing. So in terms of the market, knowledge of those skills, you're absolutely right, Mr. Banga. We are trying to incorporate those kind of skills in our curriculum. Now, coming to you, Vaibhav, you worked, in an international MNC on the fixed income side. How do you think the skill set are different? Would you agree with the view with Mr. Mokashi and Mr. Banga had?
Actually, I would, take a couple of points which Mr. Mokashi made. Am I audible? Yeah. So, firstly, if you would look at somebody, we are out hiring in the market quite a few times, and the role which we do is credit analysis of corporate or financial institutions clients across Asia, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I think we cover a broad gamut of clients within ourselves. Now, when we are doing credit analysis, as Mr. Banga pointed out, somebody thinks that credit analysis skills are given and people are born with it, right? That's not the case. We hire CAs, we look at MBA campuses, and I myself am a CA, so I can give you that perspective. We learn a lot of finance, we learn a lot of ratios, but we don't know how to apply those ratios in a logical way to come with credit conclusions. You go to MBA institutes, you will see that there is a lot of talk which is there about corporate finance, M&As, how do you get IPOs, but you interview people and ask them a couple of questions on credit ratios, and the answers which you will get are hilarious. So, the most important thing which a credit-focused course should look at is orienting people to think logically and come out with credit solutions. You can get 10 financial ratios, but if you don't know the application of the financial ratios or the interpretation of the financial ratios, I mean, those ratios are meaningless, right? So I think most of the curriculums which we have, I mean, right from, say, the commerce graduation or even going up to CAs will tell you how to calculate the ratios, how to do the accounting properly, but nobody orients you towards, I mean, how do you apply the ratios for coming up with credit? And I think in the introduction, when I got to know about the course, I mean, they said that we encourage you to think, and that's exactly what is required. Thinking on credit lines, and I mean, in course of discussion, we'll cover this point. But I guess there are different types of analysis. There is an equity analysis. There is an analysis which is done with the purpose of making pitches for IB clients, and there is a credit analysis. So everybody does detailed analysis. But the perspective with which the analysis is done, or the focus on which areas should be there, is what a credit-specific course can teach you, which maybe a general curriculum may not be able to teach you. And I think, I mean, I've gone through the few of the details of the curriculum, and I think there seems to be a target here to teach you a very credit-oriented course here on a focus basis. So that's, I think, the value.
Well, thank you, Vaibhav. Coming to Dinesh. Dinesh, you were an engineer by background, and
right.
then you joined Fidelity, you know, the world's largest AMC in fixed income. What sort of, lack of skill set you felt? I mean, what urge you had that you need to learn some of those skill sets which you couldn't learn in some of your,
right. Actually, that's kind of an
years?
interesting question, because I remember that when I initially joined Fidelity, I was this bright chap, like, trying to sort of learn everything in finance, and I thought that, okay, given my background, I can easily absorb everything in a very short period of time. And so I was given this like relatively like small assignment where I had to think about the creditworthiness of a particular company. And as I sort of started thinking about it, I realized that unless there is a huge difference between what you learn in an academic setting and what you sort of see in practice, right? In an academic setting, you can easily learn Excel, and you can put the financial ratios, and you can create nice graphs, and you can sort of say that, hey, this company is below this threshold in terms of debt to equity or whatever it may be. And so from that perspective, this company is creditworthy. You should immediately lend to them. But then what you see in practice, like you get into so much messy stuff. It's really messy. And that's where the real challenge is, right? Like real life is messy. So you really need to dive into that company's like financial statements. You need to see like, okay, what are the cash flows actually looking at? And like, for example, like there are a lot of red flags that you need to be aware of. And only when you like actually think about real world problems and sort of like when you encounter those kind of real world challenges, that's when you realize that it's not straightforward. And like whatever I learned as an engineer, it was very cut and dry. You solve an equation and you come up with an answer. It was very straightforward. But what you sort of see when you actually do credit analysis, like nothing is what it seems like. It's always messier than you think. Like you think that this particular bond is like, so when you talk about different categories of bonds and you talk about like what happens in a bankruptcy situation. So if we just use theory, you will say that, hey, this class of bond, because it's high in the capital structure, it should be completely immune from bankruptcy. And then you find out that the market price immediately plunges from 100 to 80. Now you're like, okay, what happened here? Like I thought this bond is like pretty safe. So what happened? Like why is the market punishing these bonds? And then you find out that there are so many sort of negotiations that happen behind the scenes, that there is so much that goes on behind the scene that you really need to sort of like encounter, you need to sort of like look at real world situation. And that's why I think a program like this can be actually quite handy. Because like if you try to learn credit analysis in a very sort of generic manner, you will learn some ratios and all that. But let's say you have a program where you essentially have real world problems, right? And you sort of like go through them and you find out that like in this case, the cash flow that you thought it exists in the company, it actually doesn't exist. You look at those kind of situations, then you realize that you really need like specialized program. You can't just rely on sort of a general course or a general MBA course or something like that.
And that's where I guess the value which CARE has added by putting in, the immense experience they have by putting real case studies in the entire curriculum. Now, interestingly, I've read a report which says that, and it's a Morgan Stanley report of December 2012, which says that there are 51 stocks in the world which are covered by more than 50 analysts, and 49 of those stocks are in India. So 49 of those stocks which are covered by more than 50 analysts are in India, and the only two other stocks are Apple and Intel. and still people are dying to become equity analysts. But Mr. Mokashi, for the benefit of students here, a lot of people don't know the fundamental difference between what is different in equity versus credit. I would say that the entire mindset is different. I mean, one place maybe you're looking for growth, a particular news item like a company is announcing for a capital expenditure might be positive for one set of investor, but not very positive for the second set of investor. How do you put that in perspective in terms of equity versus credit? Are they fundamentally very different?
Generically, when we talk about somebody who has done a CA or an MBA or any analytical program, generically everybody is an analyst. Core competency is analyst. Now, if you use the analytical knowledge for, say, mutual fund management, there is a specific way of looking at it. But the analysis is the base. If you look at from an equity perspective, analysis is a base, generically. Credit risk, there are certain skill sets which are different. Now, in a simplistic way, I would say that equity is about the upside and bond or credit rating is about the downside. In a simplistic way, people talk of credit analysts as doomsday analysts. What worst can happen? What is the worst case scenario? Whereas, how do I make a 10 bagger or a 20 bagger is what the equity guy is looking at. A typical private equity mindset. Okay, first few years are going to be a loss, and then this earnings curve is going to ride straight like rocket up, and you're going to make tons of money. That's the way the equity guys look at. Typically, something which is good in an equity sense may not be good in a rating sense, because the first few years are of a new company, there is a concept to be proven, but the guys are very confident that we'll do it. Third year onwards, it's going to be a rocket straight going up, but the rating guys are very skeptical. They said, we are not too sure whether rocket will go this way or come down straight away. So they will give a lower rating for such a company, where the private equity guy will bet on that particular proposition. Typically, look at say a yield stock, which is a steady earning. A yield stock which is steady earning, say some kind of dividend yield of 5% or 4%, might be shunned by equity investors. That is not a fancy, not a growth kind of stock. But that could be a AAA rating, because that's steady and basic fundamentals remain intact. So there are contradictions at the way you can look at an equity and a debt. But as I said, at the fundamental level, the basic analysis more or less remains same, and then you build your story as to what do you want out of that particular proposition. So that, in a simplistic way, is a difference between an equity and a debt. And while when we say we are looking at upside and we are looking at a steady fundamental process on a bond or a debt rating, prognosis is a very, very vital skill with both of them required. Prognosis means future. Rating or even an equity analyst or a bond analyst is not looking at the past. He doesn't drive the car looking at the rear view mirror. He looks at the front and drives the car. He's living on hope that somebody is going to return the money tomorrow back to him. The loan is going to be repaid back, or the equity is going to produce those kind of returns which are there. Maybe imagine a situation where in an equity sense you have actually produced the earnings, but there are no takers, there is no liquidity on the stock. So yet your value can disappear. The fundamentals are intact, but there is nobody fetching the price for it. So at the end of the day, predicting whether somebody will pay the price for it is a hazardous game, and I think there are many equity analysts who can talk about the pitfalls about such things which can happen. But from a rating perspective, when I say prognosis, let's look at, say there are something like a two-wheeler companies. There are 4 two-wheeler companies or 5 two-wheeler companies, let's say today in India, say Bajaj or whatever, Hero. Which of them will last 10 years down the line is not such an easy call. All of them look to be okay at this point of time. But 5 years down the line, whether Kinetic will exit or XYZ will exit, all numbers look okay. Now that is the prognosis, that's a judgment that the credit analyst will have to take. And let's imagine another example. Let's say there are 5 soap companies. There is P&G, there is Unilever, there is X, there is Y. Which of them will succeed in the next 5 years? All of them make exactly the same kind of soap. Technically, the soap is exactly equal. But obviously, a P&G and Unilever likelihood of succession is far better than the other 2 soaps, unless the brand is built. There was one Nirma for 100 failures of soap companies. So I think it's a judgment game at the end of the day. It's not about... now that is the skill of a good analyst. Of late, we have seen rise of NPLs in the banking system. And there are questions asked about the quality of the analysis, the quality of the risk management and other things. Now, whether this is the fault or something else is the fault, all these are part of the analysis that one needs to look at.
Well, you raised an interesting point about NPLs and the kind of quality of analysis. Mr. Banga, coming to you, I mean, you are in the credit risk side. How different do you think, are the skill set versus, someone who's approving credit versus someone who is monitoring or, looking at the risk from a bank perspective? Because it's bank's job to basically give capital to people who require it, be it a small SME or a MSME or a big corporate.
I think you started a big debate on, how would you like to view it as an investment on an equity side or, or a debt side. But fact is, analytics are, of course, all the same or more or less on the same. The point is, where are you focusing? When an analyst focuses on an equity